So how many of you have ever seen the Carousel of Progress at Disney World? Anyone? Okay. So I used to live in Orlando, Florida, the home of Disney World. And it's possible that we went on the Carousel of Progress maybe every time we were there, for two main reasons. One, it was air conditioned. And that's important when you live in Florida. And two, it never had a line. Like it was the only ride that you could find in all of Disney World that didn't have a line. For those of you who don't know the ride, it was first featured at the 1964 World's Fair, and talking about the progress that has come throughout the ages. It has 6 different scenes, and instead of the scenes rotating, the chairs rotate, which is pretty cool. It gets old after like the 4th or 5th one, but it's okay. Each one has the same family, but it has different elements of progress, from electric lights to refrigeration and TV to the present, which was really the 80s, but they're trying to update it, and it has us talking to our ovens and video reality games. Imagine that. So anyone can sing, "There's a great big beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day." That's the song as it rotates every time. Okay, so there's a little flashback onto Carousel of Progress. But the whole premise of it, of each milieu, is that the progress is making our lives better. With each generation, it gets better and better and better. And in some ways, that's true. And in some ways, it's not. In most things that we talk about, it's complicated and nuanced. And it is also the final characteristics that we're talking about in our series, our sermon series on white supremacy culture. Tima Akun and I will discuss the ways that I agree. There are some things in the writings that I don't agree with, but Tima Akun says that our cultural assumption that the goal is always to be, do, or get more, or to be, do, or get bigger. This leads to an emphasis of what we can objectively measure, how well we are doing at that being, doing, getting more, and it posits that this is more important and valuable than the quality of our relationships to all living beings, and I would add to our earth. So again, the whole point of Akun's thoughts on these characteristics of white supremacy culture, and my goal of highlighting them this year, is to look at how these characteristics and qualities lead to disconnection from each other and from ourselves and to all things. The antidote to all of these aspects is to lead us away from separation and racism and lead us into reconnection. So exploring these characteristics of white supremacy culture with you all has been my first sermon series here. It's been one of the ways that I tried to live into our board's goal of living into our 8th principle to dismantle the forms of racism and oppression and live into our own wholeness by doing that. We voted on this principle last June, and it's important for us to not just say, okay, we did a thing, yay, us, look at us, whoo. We actually have to do some of the work to say, what does that mean now? To accountably dismantle. What are the actions that we have to do? We've been living into the discomfort of this, of how we make it our worldview. Now, I want to acknowledge that some of you are probably very glad that this sermon series is over. You're tired of hearing about this. You may be waiting for me to be done talking about race, and I'll tell you, I'm never going to be done talking about race. But the series will be done. I've also heard from a number of you how much you've enjoyed these series. I've had many conversations where you've remembered different characteristics. Somebody will say like, ooh, that's me being urgency. Oh, here's my white supremacy characteristic of perfectionism coming out. And you've caught yourself, and you've discussed them in your small groups, and you've written to me in emails. You've told me which ones really resonate, and some of you have told me which ones are really not working for you. And that's the thing that I've really enjoyed the most about this series, is that it's created a conversation between us and amongst each other. I am planning a new series next year. It's about how we find the hope of liberation in different world religions. So there's a little sneak peek for next year. The other thing that I've loved about the series is that it's seeped into so many other sermons and services that we've talked about this year. The point of these characteristics is that the antidote of white supremacy is to reconnect with ourselves, with each other, and with all of our nature. It is helping us to undo the harmful elements of our culture that has prioritized production, alienation, and separation. The theme has seeped into services from our water communion and flower communion to Earth Day, and creating a community where we practice that connection as we're feeling relevant, as it is relevant in the world. So let's talk a little bit about this progress is bigger and better. Akun says that the idea shows up in how we define success. Success is always bigger and more. If you have a bigger house, you are more successful. If you grow a bigger business, you are more successful. If you get more awards, that is more successful. We definitely see this in our capitalistic society. It is stated or implied that the goal is to grow, to add staff, create more products, increase revenue. But we also see it in nonprofits and even churches and congregations. The goal is to have more classes, gain more membership, serve more people, regardless of how well we can serve them. Raise more money, regardless of whether that is the right thing to do for the people we're raising with and from, or to gain more power and influence for its own sake. All of this without regard to the organization's mission, especially the people or living beings that the organization is in relationship with. When you have the bigger is better mindset, it doesn't just give value, not even negative value, to the cost of it. It leaves little room to consider the cost in social, emotional, psychic, embodied, or spiritual realms. It doesn't include the cost to human relationships or the cost to our natural environment. Bigger and more and better is steeped in our American and our Western culture. If you look at the history of the United States, you see it in multiple ways. The country was founded on the idea of manifest destiny, that already inhabited lands were meant to be colonized. Colonizers wanted more and more and more and more land. After conquering the native people in the East, they wanted more and more land until the entire country was colonized. Each time a treaty was created, and a shout out to the characteristics of worship of the written word in the treaties, by the way, but it was broken time and time again, and more land was conquered. I want to look at this characteristic in 3 other ways of how it shows up as a part of white supremacy culture. First of all, let's look at the privilege of having more, always more. So I'm going to admit that I have more because of my privilege. I have more because my parents had more. My parents started saving when I was young so that I could go to college, and I had some so that I could afford to put a down payment on a house. I could take risks in my career because I knew I had a family safety net that I could fall on. My ancestors had more, and I have more because I had very few obstacles in getting more. My grandfather took advantage of the GI Bill and got a low-cost loan after World War II, something that black soldiers could not take advantage of. The main wealth that most families had and have, including mine, was their homes. I was never turned away from getting a mortgage or looking in a specific neighborhood like our brown and black neighbors often still are. It was seen positive to accumulate all the things, and my family did, with absolutely no obstacles or policies to stop them. So that's first. the privilege of it. Second of all, we often value those who have progressed more than those who have not, where progress is measured in degrees and grades and money and power and status and material belongings. So let's get specific about this. A higher number of folks who are brown and black work in caring fields, and their lived experiences, wisdom, and knowledge is invisible. It's invisible often, and their careers are seen as less successful as others. I think in this congregation of our professional social workers and teachers and nurses, many of whom have needed to get a master's degree and who still make significantly less and can be valued significantly less than other professions that also require a higher degree. I have less schooling as a minister than some of my teachers' friends do, my social worker friends. And don't even get me started on those who are caring for our older folks, serving our food, cleaning our spaces, and caring for our children. They are underpaid, undervalued, overworked, and the same titles of successful rarely fall in their laps. I am talking about our challenges with capitalism and the exponentially increasing income gap, but ultimately I'm also talking about our worth as humans, which has never been about money that we make. Each and every person has worth, our Unitarian Universalist values tell us. Every person has worth and dignity, and it is our white supremacist culture that has taught us that some humans have more worth than others. The third issue with the bigger is better idea is the impact that it has on our environment. How many more things do we need? How much more space do we need to take up? How much more do we need to consume? How many more things do we need to buy that end up being disposed shortly after? The bigger is better and more is more mindset is truly killing our world. We need less, but that is so contrary to what is told and how we think in our world. I read 13 books on my study lead last week. I just want to say I was feeling very in the category of more is successful. Right? Thank you for seeing the irony of that. Like I felt very accomplished because I read more books. And so now I'm preaching on this. I just want to note the irony that it's very steeped well in there. But one of them was a book on the history of Phoenix. And over in the book, it was just all about how Phoenix has grown. You know, Phoenix was small, and then it became the 60th largest city, and then it became the 23rd, and over and over it says, and then we were the sixth largest and the fifth largest. And I keep thinking about when I moved here that everyone wanted to tell me that this was the fifth largest city in the United States. It's almost like there's an inferiority complex, right? Like if we say we're the fifth largest, it makes us feel more important. Why? Why is that? Like larger and bigger makes us feel more better? Because is it better that Phoenix is the fifth largest city in the United States? Do we have enough water to support that? Are we growing sustainably with the infrastructure that we need? Are we taking care of the people who are getting kicked out as more people are moving in? We have a massive tent city downtown in the city of Phoenix, and it is going to get bigger because everyone's rents are going up, people's houses are being pulled out from under them as people can sell for more, and the wages aren't going up, and bigger is hurting us. It's hurting us in Phoenix. White supremacy culture makes us look at, is bigger and growing really better? And is it serving all of our folks equally? I would argue that it is not. Now let me bring it a little bit closer to home, maybe uncomfortably so, here at UUCP. In a few weeks, we're going to be presenting a budget that is smaller. It is smaller than we asked for. It's smaller, really, than we need. So I want you to check yourself and see what your reaction is to that, just where it is in your body. Did you go to worry? Did you go to shame? Is it fear? Might be relief? Disappointment? What are the assumptions that we have of how we should be doing more, making more, growing more, more? And are those healthy for us? Now, I want to tell you, this is a very responsible budget. The Finance Committee, the board, the staff, we are feeling actually hopeful. And we're not going to talk about the specifics now. We'll have lots and lots of meetings to do that. And it isn't really about the actual number. It's our reaction to saying, should we always be growing? Is that always possible? Is being bigger necessarily always better? We believe it's responsible because we are this size in members and in finances that we are right now. And what matters is not the number, but what we do with it. Living into this means that we're prioritizing the relationships and what we're doing with it and the work that matters to us. So this is my challenge to you with this service and with everything that we've discussed in this series. Why do we think like we do? Is it because it's right, or it's because we have been taught by our culture that that's how we should? What is it of our culture that has separated us from each other? What of this culture has taught us that some people are better, more worthy than others? And what is the culture that we actually want to create, to live in, and to project out in the world? For me, it is one where we are truly all equal and worthy. A culture that values each and every single person, that showers each person with love. I want a culture that values our earth and our relationship with it. I want an environment where we look at ourselves and every other person and see the beauty that each and every one of you contain. I want to celebrate that. That is the anti-white supremacist culture, the UUCP culture, the world culture that I hope to create and sustain. So might it be.